Keep in touch with the Wolf Connection Podcast on our Instagram handle at the Wolf Connection Pod, or email us your questions, comments, and guest ideas to podcast@wolfconnection.org. Thank you for your support, and howls to you all. Welcome to the Wolf Connection Podcast. I'm your host, John Calvin. So we read this article that was published by Outside Magazine probably in the winter of this year. And we were able to track down this world traveler. She is a freelance writer. She writes mostly about adventure, travel, camping, national parks, outdoor gear for a lot of publications, including USA Today. She started working with Outside Magazine in 2015, and she's been a writer for over 10 years. She's based in Montana for now, until she goes on her next jaunts. Her name is Katie Jackson. Katie, it's nice to meet you. Glad that you're settled at home, like you said, for the summer. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Yellowstone is literally about an hour from my house, so I don't mind being home for the summer, and I'm just enjoying what Montana has to offer.
What was the last trip you were just on before you stopped home?
I did a 2-week Scandinavian cruise in June, but in May, I actually did a mountain biking safari in Botswana, and that was crazy. That was probably the Scandinavian cruise was nice, but the safari in Botswana was wild. Because you're on bicycles and literally riding alongside, there's herds of wildebeest, and you look down and you see leopard tracks, and that was crazy. So I'm still reliving that.
Yeah, I mean, how'd you get started in this? Because you grew up in Montana. Your family has a ranch that's been in there for a few generations. So you grew up in that community. Just how did this all come about for you? What led you to this passion of traveling around the world and writing all about these adventures and national parks and gear and things of that sort?
Yeah, so I grew up in Montana on a ranch, and I would say when I was about 14, I decided I needed some diversity in my life. I wanted to meet people who were different skin color, different religion, different sexual orientation, and you don't really find that in Montana. So I Googled the most diverse place in the world. And at the time it was Queens, New York. So as soon as I graduated high school, I moved to Queens, New York, and went to college there, went to St. John's University and got a degree in marketing. And my first jobs out of college were working for big travel companies, and big travel companies like American Express Travel or Wyndham Hotels or Disneyland. They have budgets set aside to host writers, to host media or bloggers or influencers for free. So I would coordinate those free trips in exchange for coverage and arrange those. And after a few years of sitting in my cubicle on Park Avenue, I was like, you know what? I could do away with this salary and just take these free trips. So I literally just flipped. So I was the one coordinating these trips. And then all of a sudden I'm like, well, I'd rather just write and get to go on these trips myself. So I've been doing that now since about 2015.
How do you start writing about outdoor gear? It sounds like an awesome gig.
Yeah, no, it's you should see how many boxes I have in my garage. Or like Camelback just sent me a package today, and tomorrow I'll get one from Fjallraven. I get so much gear. The delivery guys, I probably think I'm crazy, but I started writing about gear because a lot of outlets these days are now covering gear as a way to make money through affiliates and through online shopping. So everything from Outside Magazine to the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, they're now covering a lot of products, because then when readers buy those products, they'll get a commission. So it wasn't so much me wanting to get into it. It was editors saying, can you do a roundup of the best tents under $400? So it was editor driven, but I don't complain because I get all these cool samples, and I like knowing that I can save readers money or time for shopping.
And so when you get all these products, mm-hmm. what's your time frame in terms of having to use it and test it out and then write the piece? Because we were talking just before, and you're like, I have a bunch of pieces that I'm backlogged on. So what's your time frame for that when you're receiving all these packages and then have to test out all the gear essentially?
I usually just do a huge batch. It's usually a pretty quick turnaround because I travel most of the year and I can't get packages internationally. So I'll have everything shipped to me at my home here in Montana. And then within 2 weeks, I'll put out 12 articles or 12 stories. So as soon as I get the gear, I'm testing it. And like my neighbors think I'm weird. I'll be out setting up a tent in the middle of the day and they'll be like, why are you doing that? Like, you're not going to sleep in it. But I'm like, I need to know how easy it is to set up. So I have to pretty much test it all right away. The best part is when I do a lot of beauty products as well. And there's days when it's like, I don't want to try this hair day, or I don't want to, one time I had to test this home waxing kit and it's like, I don't feel like waxing anything right now. Or I don't even have hair to wax, but I had to. So
It's wild. I mean, how is this, has this given you a different perspective? I imagine it has, but I don't want to project, just from, like you say, switching from a cubicle lifestyle and a work style to now an outdoor travel. You said, I think this year or in the last 10 months, you've hit every continent. Mm-hmm. So what's that like for you, and how has that switched, I guess, your internal and your external facets? Because again, you're not a cubicle worker. You are just out in it pretty much 90% of the time.
Yeah, no, it's definitely given me a bigger picture. To use that adage, I think a lot of people see the trees, and having now seen every continent and been to dozens and dozens of countries, sometimes as many as 30 in 1 year, I see the forest, and it's just given me a different perspective. And I'm especially grateful for the things that we have. And I don't think I complain as much as people here living in the States, because I know what things are like in a lot of other places that have it worse. Or I know of people who would give their left arm or their firstborn to move to the US. So that's the biggest thing that I've noticed. And it's been awesome, but it also is isolating, because not many people can relate to having been as many places as I've been. And so when I do meet younger people who want to get into this career, I have to let them know it's not good if you want to have stable relationships. And also it will isolate you, and you'll have experience that other people don't have. And unless they're really interested in that, it's just something you go through yourself, and you have to process that.
What was that like for your family when you decided to take off and do this type of career? Were they behind you? Was it something that they said, go for it, Katie? Or was there a little bit of apprehension there? How did that go over?
I think if you read the Outside Magazine article, you'll get a feel for what my mom is like. And my mom, when I was 18, moving to New York City, in Queens, which I lived in the neighborhood where 50 Cent grew up and got shot. So it was a pretty dangerous neighborhood. But what my parents, they encouraged me because I got a full ride scholarship, so they weren't going to stop me. But what my mom told me was, you better always have your ID on you, because I don't want to fly somewhere to have to identify your body. And that's kind of been the joke. And that's been, it was a joke. And that's kind of been their attitude. Like, I could email my dad and say, hey Dad, I'm in Spain today. Tomorrow I'm taking off for Thailand. And he'll just respond back, have fun, love, Dad. But that said, I did have an incident in South Africa at the end of May. I was hiking by myself, on a trail in Cape Town, and I was attacked and robbed and assaulted by a man with a knife. And my mom came, she flew to South Africa, and she supported me and was with me. So for as much as they make jokes about, how dangerous it is where I'm going and stuff, they do show up. But they've never been like, we don't think you should go there, or they don't half the time they don't even know where I am. So
Yeah. I mean, it definitely seemed that. I mean, from reading the article, and you just had it seems like a very solid and stable childhood in terms of, working on the ranch, and just go into that a little bit about, because people may, if they hadn't read the article, just so everybody knows. So we'll be talking about the specific article, and then we'll get into it. So it's called "My Rancher Parents Hate Wolves. I Took Them on a Wolf Watching Tour in Yellowstone to Change Their Minds." So that's the article that we're referencing. That's in Outside Magazine. So just go into your family's ranch, which it's called Lazy JK, and I wanted to make sure I got that right. just how is that? What's it like growing up in the ranching community, especially in Montana, and being in that every single day for the better part of your childhood before you obviously leave and go off to college?
Yeah. So growing up on a ranch, for starters, it's a lot of work, and you learn early on that animals come first. So if I wanted to go have a sleepover or go hang out with friends or whatever, cows had to be fed, the pigs their pens had to be cleaned out and whatever. You just learn, I think in some families goes like faith, family, friends, but in a ranch life, it's like ranch, faith, family, friends. You just always have, the ranch has to come first. So for example, like right now it's haying season. And as long as the weather is good, my parents are out either swathing and cutting hay or they're baling it. It doesn't matter if there's something really fun going on in town. As long as the weather's good, they have to hay. And there's no, there, it's black or white. The ranch always comes first. The animals come first. And so that was nice in the sense of being a kid, knowing that. And I grew up with a sense of discipline and a hard work ethic. So I never really had chore lists. Like we don't call them chores because they're just things you do. It's like brushing your teeth. You don't call brushing your teeth a chore. Well, getting the eggs, that's not a chore. That's just what you do. That's how you have eggs in the fridge when you pull the door open. So it gave me a really hard, a good work ethic that has paid off, and I'm so grateful for it now. At the time, yeah, I complained, but at the time now, I'm extremely grateful for that.
And what was it like in that, just being in that community? Because it seems like it's we've spoken to a couple of people that have had ranches in their families for generations, and people that are in that community. And it really just seems like a very tight-knit group, and that they watch out for each other, that they are looking out for, it seems for the most part, the ones we've spoken to, for everyone's best interest, so that they can continue to survive and hopefully thrive in these settings. Is that how it was? Is that how it is for your family, for Lazy JK? Is there a lot of partnerships going on, or how is it situated for your family?
Yeah, I would say it's like, I think my parents are part of a co-op, and the neighboring ranches, we're not in competition with them. We will lease land to them. They'll lease land to us. If hail damages our crop, damages our hay crop, and we need hay for our cows, we reach out to a local rancher. Hey, do you have extra hay we could buy? And not just, so yes, it's very collaborative. And these families, at least in central Montana where I'm from, the ranches go back generations and generations. So my grandparents knew their grandparents, and my great grandparents knew their great grandparents, and it becomes kind of incestuous in the sense that sometimes the families will, farmer's daughter dates the guy from the ranch down the road or whatever. But yeah, these families are really intertwined, and they do collaborate and cooperate, and everybody looks out for each other. And if your tractor breaks down, we'll lend you a tractor if we have one, that kind of thing.
So, I mean, as we transition into wolves, how does it happen that your favorite species is your family's least favorite species? And I imagine it's not as simple as, child parent contrarian dynamics. So how does that happen?
I wish I could say that, because that would be easy to say.
Yeah,
my parents don't like wolves, so obviously what they don't want me to do, I'm gonna like.
Yeah.
But I don't think that was it, because when I was younger and became infatuated with wolves, I did not care what my parents thought or what they I didn't really know their attitude towards wolves until I was older. But I can trace my love for wolves going back to when I was like 4 years old. So I think what it has to do with is, on the ranch we had sheep when I was really young, and we had sheepdogs, and the sheepdogs, there's something about the dogs that I just gravitated towards, and so wolves are like an even wilder form of that, and that to me was like, this is the ultimate dog, as a wolf. So yeah.
That's wild. So, like, what kind of story? I mean, what was your family's relationship with wolves that early on?
They were like, they were a threat that was always there but wasn't there. So I think they lived in my parents' head. There's this, because the reality is our ranch is in central Montana and there are not wolves in central Montana. Yes, every 10 years or so there might be a sighting, but it's not a big threat. But I think my parents just worried about them and needed something. They needed a bad guy, and I think wolves fit that narrative for them. And even though it's not, again, a serious threat, it was an easy villain, and they needed that. So, and they to be honest, they really hate coyotes, and coyotes are the number one killer of livestock in Montana. So I think wolves are just bigger coyotes, so naturally they would hate them as well.
I'm just curious, when you use the word hate,
Mm-hmm.
can you be more specific about what you mean by that? Do you feel that your parents hate wolves and coyotes, or is there like a more detailed way to describe? I'm genuinely curious. Is there a more detailed way to describe that?
It's a good question. I believe my mom hates coyotes because I have been with her when she shoots them.
I see.
And for her, again, it's black or white. It's not a coyote is bad in this situation or in this circumstance when it's too close to the cows. For her, I think it's easier to just categorize coyotes as bad. And she doesn't have the time of day or doesn't take the time of day to consider what they might mean for the environment or other animals. As a rancher, she doesn't have that luxury of having that time to think about that. It's just, this is a bad thing, I'm going to shoot it. And so for my dad, he's now almost 70. And as he's gotten older, he's gotten softer. And I don't think it's fair for me to say he hates them anymore, because he's now starting to, like I said, soften up a bit and see things from a different perspective. So I don't know that he hates them, but my mom, my definition of hate is if she has a gun in her hand, will she shoot it with no questions asked? Yes.
Is that transferable to the other predators that are on the landscape too in Montana? Bears, cougars, bobcat, anything that poses a threat to the livelihood of the ranch and your parents' way of living?
Yes, but it's also it's not restricted to just the livelihood in terms of money. For example, my grandma lives in just about half a mile from our ranch, and her caretaker had a flock of about 12 chickens, and there was a black bear that kept getting into the chickens this summer, and it only killed one. I think it was not a very good hunter or whatever. But even though those chickens were not used for a livelihood, and my mom went and killed that bear, I think it's more she considers it justice. Like, so it's not like those 12 chickens were bringing in any income or anything. I don't even know if they were of the age where they were laying eggs yet. But the fact of the matter is a bear should leave them alone and should not be in that near the chicken coop. So my mom's way of dealing with it was to kill it, not to call Fish, Wildlife and Parks, or not to move the chickens. It was, bear doesn't belong here, so I'm going to kill it. It was a black bear, and she killed it.
How do actually, before I ask that question, what do you do with a black bear after you kill it? Do you have to call Fish and Wildlife, or
so they did call after that, and they removed the body. But the bad thing, and I wasn't there when this happened, but I heard the story Sunday from my grandma's caretaker, and my mom's rifle wasn't, what do they call it? The scope wasn't sighted in or something. And so, so it took about 3 different shots. So it was not a execution style easy way out for the bear. It was a painful, messy kill. But that's just, if I had been there, I couldn't talk to my mom and be like, Mom, like, it's only killed one chicken, or what if we move the chicken coop somewhere else, or this bear's been here longer? There is no conversation.
That wouldn't have worked.
Nope.
Wow. So the question I was going to ask was, how do your grandparents feel about wolves or coyotes?
Most of my grandparents, especially the ones who we inherited the ranch from, they're dead, but they also would not like them. My only remaining grandparent, the one that she was caretaker, had these chickens. She's from Brooklyn, New York, and she doesn't, she doesn't care about ranching really. So she probably does not hate them.
Yeah, it's interesting how that goes across. There's an interesting spectrum, I think, of how people approach wildlife out in the West, and all the people that we've spoken to, and how, like Stephen was asking you just before, just for you to have that different viewpoint than the generational, your grandparents and great grandparents and your parents have had. So born out of that for yourself, what was the conversation like for you to go to your parents and say, let's go on a wolf watching trip? Because it just seems like the 180 that nobody's expecting. Was it something that was a surprise? Was it a slow burn? How did you get them to this point to drive? How far is the ranch from Yellowstone? It couldn't be that far. I assume it's fairly close.
This is going to make me sound like a bad daughter, but my strategy there was if they wanted to see me, so my house is 2 hours from where they live, from the ranch, the house that I own in Montana, but I don't make a good effort to go up there. And they do, even if we have different beliefs, they do want to spend time with me. So my strategy and attitude is, if you want to spend time with me, it's going to be on my terms. And I think they're so desperate to spend time with me that they were willing to do that. And they do love Yellowstone. When I was a kid growing up, we'd go to Yellowstone all the time and never saw wolves. So it's not like you go there and you're guaranteed a sighting. So it's not a sore subject for them. My mom is a big elk hunter, so she loves going to Yellowstone and seeing the elk. So I think they thought of it as, this is just going to be a trip to Yellowstone. Yeah, it has a wolf angle, but we're probably not going to see any, and it'll be worth putting up with that just to get to spend time with our daughter, because they don't spend a lot of time with me.
Wow. And I mean, when you go there, and again, I will advise everybody here to absolutely read the article. It's really incredible how Katie dives into this. But you have Nathan Varley as your guide, which we've spoken to. He's an awesome individual to not only have guide you, but just to be there to bounce questions off of and things like that. It's not just, oh, here, we're going to take you to these certain spots.
Yeah.
How did that relationship form, or how did you go to Nathan's wolf guiding spot? How did that all start to get Nathan to be the ones to bring you out?
So I started getting really interested in Yellowstone wolves in around, I think, in 2015, and I just came upon Nathan by just Googling, I think, Yellowstone wolves, and I certainly didn't pick him because he has a great website, because he doesn't. No offense, Nathan, but the website didn't sell me. It was the experience, and he's so great emailing back and forth. And I would say, I'm interested in knowing about this, and he always takes the time to answer questions. And of course, when I emailed him, had said, "Hey, I'd love to take my parents and do something in January." I think I did this in December. He was like, "Just let me know the dates and I can personally take you out." And I just I chose Nathan, and I love his story because he literally grew up in the park. He went to school in Mammoth, which there's not a school there anymore, but he grew up in the park. So I don't think and his parents were both rangers and biologists. So I don't think there's anyone better to tell you about the wolves in Yellowstone. I think it's got to be Nathan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, so your parents so you have them coming to you and you're setting up this trip. Were there vocal reservations, apprehensions from them? Was it sort of a silent, okay, well, I know you said they accepted it and they'll do this.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a build up for it, or was it really just seem like a fairly normal trip that you guys would have when you were younger going into the park?
Yeah, it was not like a normal trip we'd have when I was younger. I think in a way, my parents, obviously I'm going into it thinking I can change their minds. I think my parents also went into it thinking it as a challenge to change my mind and Nathan's mind. So I think they welcomed that opportunity and wanted to share their side. And we're convinced that my dad loves to debate. So I think they looked forward to that. Whereas for as much as I wanted to change my parents' mind and bring them to Yellowstone, I was so uncomfortable almost the entire time we were there, because they embarrassed me, and they said things that, I thought might be considered disrespectful to Nathan, or it was agonizing at times. But I think you have to, when you have these conversations, you're going to be uncomfortable and you're going to get embarrassed. But you have to do that. Otherwise you're not going to make any progress. And fortunately for us, for Nathan and I, because if you picture it as being Nathan and I are Team Wolf against my parents, or anti-wolf, it was a home game for us. We were in Yellowstone, and so we had the home court advantage, and that definitely paid off. And getting to see the wolves and in the environment, and the day we went, it was the day they ended up collaring the wolves, so we had so much action. So my parents really had an amazing day, and sightings. Whereas if we hadn't seen any wolves, I don't think they would have gotten it. I think we definitely lucked out with the sightings, and that helped. Yeah.
So, I mean, was there a moment that you felt like anything had shifted, or did you wait till the end to sort of survey the group and say, okay, did this have any effect on you at all, or what's your perspective now, or how did that go?
The moment for me was when we was the first. Well, it was the sighting that we had. It was 22 wolves. It was pretty much the entire Junction Butte pack, and we were not even expecting. We were hoping to see wolves on this trip, but Nathan doesn't guarantee wolf sightings. So we would have considered saying one lucky. But when we pulled up to this lookout and there were 22 wolves, and seeing how excited my mom and dad were and how impatient they were for Nathan to set up the scopes, that that was when I was like, okay, this might work. And also, my parents, as soon as Nathan did have those scopes set up, there was only 2 scopes, and my parents hogged them. And my parents are really considerate, and usually, as they're the daughter and the only girl, I get things first. But I had to be like, excuse me, can I look through the scope? And so I think it was the quantity of seeing. You don't see 22 wolves at once. It's just it was just overwhelming. And having that sighting, I just saw how my parents reacted and knew okay, this could be possible. And also with that, you get to see, when you see the entire pack, you get to see the pack dynamics, and it just tells a more complete story than if you saw 1 or 2 lone wolves. Seeing the entire pack and just hanging out for a couple hours watching them paints a bigger picture than if you were to just see 1 or 2 wolves. So we really lucked out with that sighting.
And obviously we could insinuate the overall impact of or the overall goal of taking someone who doesn't like wolves to Yellowstone to see wolves. But you're in a unique situation where you don't only love Yellowstone, you love this particular species, and you were raised within a family that didn't. So I'm curious, from someone who's that intimately connected to both of these things, what were you hoping that they would see? And when I say see, I don't mean see with the naked eye. I mean, what were you hoping they would see differently, just merely by laying eyes on wolves in Yellowstone?
I was hoping that they would notice the people around us, the other visitors to the park, and how excited they were to see wolves, and to look at their license plate and realize, oh, people drive all the way out here from Virginia in the winter to see wolves. And because I don't think until that moment, I think my parents saw wolves as a problem animal that affect Montanans, and they don't realize what these animals mean to people all over the world and how far they're willing to travel to see them. So for as excited I was to have my parents see the wolves, I also wanted them to see the people who come to see the wolves. And that's what you get when you go to Yellowstone, because it's rarely just as soon as you pull over your vehicle, other vehicles are going to pull over and be like, what are you looking at? So what interests me as much as the wolves are the other wolf watchers, and hearing their stories, and they're fascinating. So
Yeah, I mean, when you're there, and again, for you to be able to see not only roughly the entire Junction Butte pack, which is a massive pack of wolves there, but to see the collaring of wolves, which you go into detail in the article too, and also Joanna Lambert, who was there as well. So you really got a massive trifecta in terms of not only an individual who is deep and heavy into the Colorado reintroduction, who's there watching wolves, but you get to see the scientific, the personal wolf watching experience, and then also just get somebody who is in it all the time. So you really, the trifecta was there, and it's almost like it was sacred timing for you to go at that point with Nathan to do the whole thing,
It was, and Nathan's usually, I won't say he's stoic, but he's not a extremely animated guy. But how excited he got when we heard the planes flying overhead, and he knew instantly this means they're going to start collaring them. We really lucked out. And then he saw Joanna's vehicle, and Joanna, seeing Nathan's eyes light up, because he's done this for 30 years or a long time. And so it takes a lot to get him excited. And he was excited. So in that moment, I knew this is going to be really special. And with Joanna, I didn't know who she was, but there was something about her. She's very charismatic, and she also was as animated and lit up like Nathan did. And to see these two people just so excited, that's contagious. And our energy started to match their energy, and it was just a cool experience. And then my parents, they're really into aviation. My family's got a few small planes, so adding in the plane component, they were all about that. And yeah, like you said, having the scientists there, because the Wolf Project people were there, and they're visible in their neon vests. My parents are able to see, like, oh, it's not just the visitors who care about them. These are volunteers who are out here on it was brutally cold day, and they really care about these animals and learning from them. And I should have bought a lottery ticket that day. Because we lucked out.
You should have played numbers or something. I mean, for you, seeing your parents enthusiastic in that way, what did that bring up for you in that moment? Because I don't know, are your parents mostly stoic most of the time because of the work that they do, because of working on the ranch, and everything is so regimented. When you saw them in that moment or in those key moments, what was that like for you to just take a step back and view that, as opposed to all the stuff that was going on around you?
Yeah, I was, I don't think many people, I don't think we get to see our parents excited like a kid on Christmas morning very often. If there are people out there who do, I'm envious of you, because my parents are, I think I said Kathy Bates would play my mom in a movie, and she's a very serious woman, and has had a tough life. She's been in a car accident, and my dad has diabetes and has also had a tough life. So they're rough around the edges, and it takes a lot to get them excited. And so to watch them, and what was cool about when they were watching the wolves is they didn't care how they came off to anyone else. Like, they didn't. Whereas if I was them and people knew my position on wolves, even if I was internally excited, I wouldn't want to show that to Nathan. But they just let down their guards and were completely like, wow, this is cool. So the tough rancher, that persona that they had, just kind of went away for a bit, and they were like giddy young kids who were like, Nathan, can you set that scope up any faster? And my mom taking pictures. And in that moment, also watching that, I was thinking, okay, this is all the discomfort I felt on this trip and with these conversations, and thinking I'm gonna have to apologize to Nathan after this for some of the things my parents have said. I was thinking, this is all worth it. And I knew Nathan was thinking that as well, because I think Nathan likes to take out clients who want to see wolves and are wolf advocates. I think people like my parents it's a tougher sell, and it might not be as enjoyable. But in this moment, we were able to see that, okay, it was worth it. even though it was a kind of awkward car ride there for a bit. Yeah.
I mean, just and you play it so well when you're describing your parents on the ride in, just about the debates and the jokes that they were trying to make. It's I could feel when you say that you had tension in your body the whole time. I can see the reasons why.
Yeah.
But it's all the better for me to hear from you about that excitement and about those questions that they were ultimately asking when everything was going down. Because to me, that just shows that there's something inside that I think deep down it seemed as though they wanted to see them. It wasn't they didn't want to go there and not see anything.
Yeah.
And so to see all of the action, all of that stuff, as you laid out so beautifully with the scientists and Joanna and collaring and other people's stories, that I think is, you always hope for that and dream for that. And to see that put on display, like you say, for your parents or for anyone that you take on a trip like that, that brings, I think, the innermost joy that you can stand back and watch that all unfold in front of you.
Yeah, it was incredible. And this is kind of similar. I can relate to my parents in the sense that I was in Africa a couple years ago, and I had a guide who was going to take me out on a walking safari. And he said, we're going to focus on termites and termite mounds because they're everywhere. And in my mind, I'm like, that's a waste of time. I don't care about termites. I came here to see the big five. Like, I want to see some cats and predators. Like, this is going to be terrible. I don't want to do it. But I did it. And first termite mound, I am just blown away by these creatures and seeing them up close, and then hearing from the guide about their colonies and how they operate. Termites are some of the most fascinating creatures in the world, and they're very important to the ecosystem there. And that, if you had asked me an hour before I went out on this termite walking tour what I thought of termites, I would have been like, I don't think of termites, like they're boring or whatever. But I had so many questions about termites. I ended up asking him, can we extend the tour? And that, I think, to some degree is like my parent, like, you might not realize how interesting something is or how you will react to seeing it up close until you are in that moment. And then when you're in that moment, you're like, I've only got a certain amount of time with these animals, viewing these animals. I got to get all these questions out. I got to learn as much as I can. And I'm not going to blink. I want to see as much as I can. And you don't know until you're in that experience. I would have never guessed that someone would put me in front of a termite mound and I would find it fascinating, but I did.
For them, I mean, what would you take away from it? Because I know as you get towards the end of the article, it's your mom and dad are already thinking about, we have to get back to the ranch because we have to do X, Y, and Z. Just because that seems like the normal ritual. These are the roles. They're not chores. This is the duties that we have to do when we get back to the ranch. So, do you think, from your perspective as their daughter and taking them on this experience, that this was a little bit of a break from the norm and it was sort of like just sort of an outlier? You think it's something that they would do again? Do you think anything more came out of it other than that? Because I know you seem to think that minds weren't necessarily changed and that they might have shifted slightly, but nothing too over the top. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think I made a lot of progress, and just my dad saying that going into the tour in Yellowstone, he would have shot a wolf on site, even if it wasn't near livestock. After that day, he said, you know what, I'd only shoot a wolf if it was obviously threatening the livestock and was within range. And that to me is huge. So I think it definitely changed their opinion of wolves. And one breakthrough my dad really had was that when him and Nathan were talking about how necessary, because my dad grew up in Montana and he remembers the elk population being out of control prior to the wolves. And he was talking to Nathan about that. And Nathan did a good job of validating him and saying, my dad's name is Mel. Mel, you're right. The wolves or the elk population was out of control. And so my dad, feeling like, I have some knowledge, Nathan's backing me up on this. The wolves actually were important to managing the elk population in Yellowstone. I think that kind of was a breakthrough moment for him. And instead of him and Nathan being like, you're right and you're wrong. They both agreed on something. And that was a big moment because from then on, he was like, oh, so Nathan might not be my enemy, might not be my enemy. We agree on something. And that thing that they agreed on was actually pretty big. And then I think having taken them to Yellowstone, yes, Yellowstone's in Montana, but my parents might only get there once every 4 or 5 years. But every time they go, they are reminded how important it is to Montana and to Wyoming, and that all the people that come come to see it, and they see Montana as more than just their 1,500 acre ranch in the center of the state. I think it's easy to get caught up in that and think that your world is the only world that matters, and the players in your world are are what matters. But there's other players, and the world is bigger. And I don't think that they went back home and called up their rancher friends and said, hey, we just went on this amazing wolf watching tour in Yellowstone, and guess what? Right. I think they might not be as bad as we think they are. I don't think they did that. But they posted photos from the trip, and I think if someone asked them, another rancher, another hunter, I think they would say they had a good time, and they can see now that wolf tourism is a thing in Yellowstone. And so I'm proud of myself. Not just myself, but also Nathan. I also credit it to, I think as your parents get older, they get softer and more open to things. So I think if I had tried this 5 or 10 years ago, I don't know that I would have been so successful. But now that my parents have grandkids, they've softened up a bit.
Well, again, as someone who was in this unique situation where you love wolves and you're raised in this ranch community that doesn't so much, why do you think it's so hard to change minds about predators? Is it simply the monetary issue that overrides just the reality of the threat?
I think it makes ranchers uncomfortable, and I think it's an unknown, and it's another risk that if they feel like they can just eliminate that risk, then it makes life easier. So I think that's my opinion. Is my dad and a lot of his friends, rancher friends, they're not the kind of people who want to know more. They do what they do. They want to know about what they're doing, but anything else, they're not curious, I guess. And I think I think they live in their world and want to keep it contained, and aren't willing to go out of their comfort zone as much. And that's just what I personally think. And one thing example I have is when I do come back from trips and learn something new and travel to a new place, they don't ask questions, and they're so preoccupied with their world and what's been going on for generations and generations that unless I have some new tractor technology or something, it doesn't apply. And again, people are afraid of the unknown, and afraid of changing their lifestyle. And if this is what a family generations have done for years and years, they're going to want to stick with that. I think I heard, what did I hear? We will go out of our way more so to avoid conflict or pain than we will to seek pleasure. And so if they think wolves are bad guys, they're going to go out of their way to just avoid them, versus to try to learn more about them. And hey, maybe if wolves were brought back and let's say we didn't ranch anymore, we did something else, maybe they would be happier. But they don't want to even entertain that idea. They just want to live with what they know.
Yeah. When you talk about, now that you wrote this is obviously one of many articles that you've written over the course of your career.
Mm-hmm.
Is this spurring more, because you were just saying that people don't want to learn the information, they don't want to gain the knowledge per se, just because of, the unwillingness of the unknown and worrying about those things. Has this given you another angle to talk about wildlife, wolves in general, to pursue maybe other articles, weaving into all the other work that you're doing to talk about them as a species, talk about their advocacy, seeing them in parks, things of that sort? Is that something that you're trying to do more in the future, or you think it's more of a one-off with the article with your parents?
No, I think it's definitely something I'm interested more so now that the response I've gotten after writing this article from people who reached out on Instagram or emailed. There is a community out there who is interested, and I would love to write for them. And I think I told you I'm going to be doing something for Outside Magazine about the reintroduction for wolves in Colorado. And it's going to be a tough piece. It's the premise of that is a rancher, a wildlife biologist, and a hiker meet at a bar. Here's what they have to say about wolves. And so I'm going to feature those three perspectives and opinions. And it's going to be a tough piece to write. Can I make more money by doing travel gear guides or writing easier fluff pieces? Absolutely. But this is a passion project. And so I'm willing to travel to Colorado and invest the hours and it's hard enough for an article when you have to interview one source, but for this, I have to find the biologist, the rancher, the hiker. I have to reach out to Colorado's government to see if they'll give me details about when and where they're going to release the wolves, which I doubt they will. It's a big ordeal, and it's going to be a big investment of my time, but I'm willing to do that because I'm passionate about this and educating other people. So yeah, it definitely will be something in the future that I will write about. Or I'm also really passionate about Africa and the wild dogs there. And I could see myself writing more pieces about safaris I go on in Africa and focusing on the wild dogs there because they also interest me the same way wolves do here. I don't think they're nearly as cool as wolves and they stink, but but there's just something about the dog species related to dogs that are just fascinating to me.
When you look back on it,
Mm-hmm.
did you ever believe, obviously, at your 4-year-old self or your younger self, your passion for wolves ever coming to this point of getting your parents to Yellowstone to view them and now possibly turning your career, at least partially, to advocacy and information as opposed to, like you say, the fluff pieces and things like that, and parsing out a part of what you do to this type of project?
No, I'm not surprised because when I'm interested in something, it becomes a big part of my life. And I know some people have phases where they are interested in one thing for a bit and then it changes. That's not like that for me. If I'm interested in something when I'm 5, I'm still interested in it. And I remember I think I was in 3rd grade, around 9 years old, when the TY Beanie Babies were a huge thing. And my parents would buy me any Beanie Baby I wanted. But they wouldn't buy me the wolf Beanie Baby. So I didn't have money. They were only $5. Beanie Babies were only $5 back then. I got $1 a week allowance. I actually got 90 cents because my dad made us tithe 10% to the church. So I had enough money to get a knockoff Beanie Baby. So I got a knockoff wolf Beanie Baby. It didn't have the tag. It had larger pellets. So it was like a dollar store Beanie Baby. But I was so proud that I paid for it with my own money. I didn't care that it wasn't a TY, that it didn't have the red TY tag. I was proud that I didn't let my parents determine what I was going to buy. They're willing to buy me Beanie Baby, but not a wolf. But I'll buy my own Beanie Baby that's a wolf. And if it's not a real Beanie Baby, it doesn't matter. I'm buying it and it's a wolf. And I don't think you go through that as a kid. And then that's just me. And I've been like that. So my love for wolves, it's not going to go away. It's going to manifest itself in some way, shape, and form. And I'm fortunate now that I can get paid for my interest. I can afford the real Beanie Baby now. So
You finally afford the Beanie Baby.
I can afford the Beanie Baby. Yeah.
Beanie Baby. Yeah, I know. Now unfortunately, you got to find them probably on eBay, and they're probably 10 times as much as they used to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
We went to Alaska when I was in 8th grade, and I bought a full-size sled dog off the animal.
Oh my goodness.
So, yeah, I love my dog stuffed animals.
Yeah. I mean, it must be something. I mean, I know for me, when I started at Wolf Connection, it was the same thing. I have such an affinity for canines and for dogs, and it transferred so beautifully over into the work that I do at Wolf Connection. I mean, Steve, was that, I can't remember, Steve, was that kind of the same with you or not really?
What's that?
With dog? Well, just like the love for dogs transferring over to wolves and stuff like that. I don't know what it was like for you. Can't remember.
Honestly, it may have gone in some way in the reverse, where definitely I see my dog differently. I have a different relationship with my dog because of my exposure to wolves. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know it was the same thing with me. Like you're right. Cause my relationship was one way, then learning to deal with wolves and wolf dogs and understanding that relationship. And you're like, oh, I've been doing this wrong for however many, for a couple decades.
Yeah.
You just got to switch and you got to hit the reset button a little bit to make that all work.
Yeah.
So Katie, for everybody out there who wants to read not only this article about wolves, but also all of your other incredible stuff that you write about, where can they find you on Instagram, your work? I know Outside Magazine, you're there, but what other places can they find your stuff and contact you and talk to you about all the awesome stuff you're writing about?
Yeah, I think the best way to do that would be to reach out to me on Instagram, which is at Katie Talks Travel, Katie Talks Travel, and slide into my DMs. I often post links to my stories there and post what I'm working on there. That's definitely the best way to reach me. And if anyone has story ideas, I'm always in the market. So feel free to shoot me any story ideas.
Yeah, and give her stuff to test out, obviously. Just send her a box full of gear and tell her what to do with it.
Please don't. But if anyone needs boxes, I have a bunch you can borrow.
If anybody's moving, we can DM Katie Talks Travel and she can help you move.
Yeah.
My last question for you, Katie, is when you hear the word wolf, what is the thing that comes to your mind?
Oh, when I hear the word ego right now is coming to mind, in the sense that I have an ego, but when I think of wolves or I'm around wolves, I don't have that ego. And I realize that they put me in my place, I think. And I'm just so in awe of them that it doesn't matter what I achieve or whatnot. If I am in front of a wolf or thinking about a wolf, I am just in awe and I feel small, and it's good. It's nice to put me back in my place, and there's something supernatural about them, and I don't know what it is, but that's what comes to mind. Is I just love how humbled I am by wolves.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Katie, love the article, love all the work that you're doing. Definitely keep us posted when you might have that Colorado piece coming out. We'd love to talk to you again and get you back on to talk about it. So just keep us in the loop with that.
Will do. Yeah.
Yeah. So Katie Jackson, thank you so much. Keep doing what you're doing. And just awesome to have you on the podcast with Steven and I. So house to you all out there, and stay on bay with you next time. Bye, everybody. Looking for more information about Wolf Connection or the podcast? Please visit our website at wolfconnection.org, where you can donate, sponsor a wolf, or become a volunteer.